All right. Hi, everyone. Um, I want to do a video on how I suspect that it's possible the Nephilim tribes are named after, at least some of them are named after their supernatural abilities, folks. And I'm going to kind of give you a summary of what I think, and then you can decide if it's a little too tinfoil hat for you, or if you want to hear more. And then after I give you kind of like my summary, I'll go through where these things are in the Bible and why I believe what I believe. Okay. Um, for instance, in the last video, I talked about Genesis 14:5 through 7, where the King Chandalomer, I think they call him the King of the North, he comes down here and he wipes out all these Nephilim tribes, and we're given their names, folks. Okay. And I told you about how Rephaim is kind of a dual meaning. And if you've ever heard me talk about this before, now, folks, just right off the rip disclaimer, I am not a Hebrew scholar, but I don't think you have to be. If you can read, you can understand, right? Okay. Now, with the word Rephaim or Rephaite, okay, the root word Rapha, and I'm going to show you that, okay? I'll show you that in the Hebrew with the Strongs, but I'll get to that. Let me just outline what I'm trying to tell you here, okay? The root word for Rapha means to heal, okay? And then also you have a tribe of Nephilim that are called Rephaites or Rephaim. And also, you'll see that word Repha or a derivative of it also used in the Bible to describe the dead, and they're linked to Sheol, folks. That's why a lot of people link the Rephaim tribe to demonic entities, folks, because and I'll show you in Isaiah where it says that the Rapha will rise to meet, I believe it's Lucifer in Isaiah 14, okay? Lucifer's descending into hell. God's prophesizing and telling us through Isaiah how he's going to send this being straight to hell, right? And about how the Rapha, the dead, will rise to meet him when he gets there, right? Okay, that's just that word Rapha, okay? But now don't forget that Rapha means to heal, folks, okay? Now here's another thing, and you can check me out on the internet, folks. A lot of people link it to, like, even alligators. You probably don't know this. I know I didn't know this. But alligators can regrow limbs, okay? That seems to be like a serpentine quality that type of animal has. Like a snake can regrow its tail, even an alligator can regrow its tail. They say that an alligator can grow limbs, right? And another thing really quickly. If you listen to my last video, I went over how, like in Revelation 18:2, where it talks about demonic entities that will inhabit Babylon and stuff, and they talked about angry birds, and I told you about how I believed that a bird, and when you see bird referenced in the Bible, most of the time it's a reference to a demonic entity and probably feminine, right? Okay. Wouldn't you know that and folks, you can Google this and check me out. They say that serpents and birds that grow feathers, right, and fly in the air, are linked to the same common ancestor through evolution, folks. Now, you and I both know most of what they teach about evolution is bankrupt. But what is it about the serpent seed? Well, I think Genesis 3, 14 and 15, where it says that the Nakash, the snake, has his seed and the woman has her seed, right? So we know that there's a demonic seed. And now you've got these demonic entities that are named after, like, reptilians and birds. And then even genetically, we can go back and trace in DNA and find out that birds and serpents are linked and they believe they had a common ancestor. Yeah, probably Satan. I mean, come on, folks. I mean, you can't, this sounds like a movie script. You can't make this stuff up, right? You know? So birds and reptiles are linked. They have a common ancestor, so says the evolutionists, right? And what else was I going to say? And one more thing, but before I forget, let me really nail this down. I want you guys to remember that the Raphaim or the Raphaites, that root word means to heal, Rapha, and I'll show you that in a little bit. And it also is in reference to the dead spirits that are in Sheol, which is hell, right? Okay, I want to drive that home. Now, we've got this tribe called the Zuzims or the Zamzamims, and I'll show you that later in Deuteronomy. And people say that they're basically the same tribe. Okay. Now, when you dig into the meaning of that word in the Strongs, that doesn't say, and it basically goes back to movement, meaning movement like gyration and whatnot. But if you get a hold of a Hebrew scholar, And this is widely accepted now by even, European white men who study this stuff, right? And basically what that means, the Zimzumims or the Zuzims, it meant that there was a buzzing sound that came from them, folks. It meant buzzing. Now, a lot of people believe that that buzzing sound was how they communicated, like they were mocking their language. But now, me being a person who's experienced spiritual warfare, that's had the high, tense buzzing around me in the atmosphere, when I can sense like an electric static in the air, when like a demonic entity would come and put me in sleep paralysis, or I would have another type of spiritual attack, and us knowing that these Nephilim are half angel, half humans, immediately I start beginning to think in my mind, okay, these Zuzims or these Zamzumims literally might have had that spiritual, might have inherited that spiritual power from their angelic fathers, folks, and when you got around them, they might have put an electrical static charge in the air, okay? Which leads me on to the next group. The Emons here, folks, that word means terror, okay? Now, how many people have experienced sleep paralysis and other spiritual attacks, say that they are hit with a supernatural dread or terror that literally rattles them to the core, and it is beyond what you fear in the natural world, like when you feel your life is in danger in the natural world. It's like these beings are projecting that fear. And once again, you've got people who have sightings of Bigfoot and black-eyed children. They say the same thing. You can feel this terror, this sense of dread oozing off of these things, okay? Now, if we've got the Zuzims named after a buzzing noise, and we have the Emons that are named after quote-unquote terror, okay? Folks, we might be literally looking at the Israelites are naming these beings for the effect that they have on the atmosphere and their spiritual abilities as they try to project fear on the Israelites when they were in these big fights, right? Okay? Another interesting fact, you've got the Amalekites down here. That word, technically, if you trace it back at the root, means lapping. And Hebrew scholars say it meant that they drank blood. A lot of people believe this is where a lot of your vampire myths come from, folks. They were of these entities here. They lapped up blood or drank blood, okay? Folks, I'm telling you, man, you really can't make this stuff up. Now, there's a lot of overlap, okay? And as an example, I'm a video gamer, folks. I used to play a lot of video games, not so much anymore. And I played a lot of zombie games, right? Now, if you guys have played zombie games, you're going to get this reference instantly. When you're playing a zombie game, or even in movies, like if you guys watch The Walking Dead, have you noticed how mankind has a way to kind of nickname an enemy that they don't fully understand by what they see the thing do? For instance, you have the slower zombies, which people would refer to as walkers. Then you have like the faster zombies in video games, who in that folklore most oftentimes are called quote-unquote runners, meaning they move faster. Then you might have like a being called a bloater, which is a heavy-set type zombie that explodes when you get around it. Or you might have the quote-unquote the screamers, which when you get around them, they let out a high-pitched scream and it alerts all the zombies around them and you kind of get bum-rushed by like 10 or 15 zombies, right? That is like mankind has a propensity to do that. We name that by what we reference, what the most discernible factor with those beings are when you encounter them, right? So, yeah, I just, that just really sticks out to me, folks. That's my opinion on it. I believe that's quite possibly what they're telling us here, folks, with these names, okay? And once again, and another thing I want to bring up, we take a lot of stuff back to the Strongs, but even James Strong, who came up, who basically put together the Strong's Concordance for us, there are even quotes that I've read from him, which he says that the whole reason why he put together the Strong's Concordance was to familiarize English readers with the meanings of the Hebrew words, but not necessarily that it was the end-all say-all for the definition of that word. And if you read in the Strong's, especially when it comes to demonic entities, they try to say that they're birds and other animals, but they also say that the true meaning of the word, they are uncertain, right? And I showed you that in the last video, okay? All right. So let's move on here. Let me first deal with this. Okay, another thing too, really quickly, all right? Now, last time in the last video, I referenced to how the Israelites were sacrificing to demonic entities called satyrs, right? Okay, and I told you how I thought that they were linked to the goat of Mendes and or Pan because they came from Egypt and goat of Mendes worship came from Egypt, right? Okay, I want to show you this in the Bible, and I want to show you what your KJV calls it, right? Okay, let me zoom in here. I'm hoping you all can see this. Okay, Leviticus 17:7. And they shall no more offer their sacrifices unto devils, after whom they have gone a whoring. Okay, whoring is a reference to idolatry. They were idly worshiping these things, folks. Okay, this shall be a statute forever unto them throughout their generations. God is telling God is telling the Israelites to get rid of that Egyptian idolatry and stop worshiping these things. That's where I believe it came from. And right down here, that word is satyr, shaggy, he-goat, fawn, devil. Okay, now notice that it's linked to a he-goat, a shaggy, hairy goat, and the KJV will tell you that the context, as far as in the Hebrew, means a devil. It literally says that in the KJV. Their sacrifices unto devils. Folks, this is a demonic entity. They're not out here just sacrificing to a male goat. There's no power in just goat the animal, but there's power in the symbology, okay? That is a satyr. Google like the demigod Pan. You'll understand more about what we're talking about here, right? All right. Now, let's go to Genesis 14, and let me show you this real quickly. All right. Rephaims. Okay. Now, this is a derivative of that word. Now there's H7497, I believe H7495, and a few other ones. Okay, but this is one of the base meanings that's based in the root word. Okay, from H7495. That's the root word that I told you, Rapha, which means to mend or to cure, okay? And once again, that's why I brought up alligators and snakes have the ability to repair itself. There's something about a serpent or a serpent seed of the things that they can heal themselves, folks. And that's, I believe, the Raphaim might be called that because they may have been able to regenerate limbs or heal faster than another entity, folks. And that's, that is linked to the serpent, And again, the base word is heal or cure. Here you've got invigorating a giant Raphaim. Okay. Now, 1 second here. Let me find that verse real quickly about the Shadim. Okay. Okay, it's Isaiah 14:9. This folks blew my mind. Okay. Where are we at here? Isaiah 14, and we've got 9. Okay. Hell, that is Sheol, okay? Hades, world of the dead, includes its accessories and inmates, grave, hell, pit, okay? Basically, Hebrew scholars will say, quote unquote, this is the unseen state of the dead, because in Sheol often is included Abraham's bosom, which is actually a nice place that people believe is also referred to as paradise, which was a holding place for the Old Testament saints until Jesus Christ died for them, went down there and basically declared himself and declared his victory over hell, and then took them up out of Abraham's bosom into heaven, folks. That's another video all into itself, but I want you to know what Israelites believe about this, right? Okay? And then here's that word, the dead, okay? Hell from beneath, this is talking about the descent of Lucifer into hell. I believe Isaiah 14 was about Lucifer, the king of Babylon, right? Okay? From beneath is moved to meet thee. Okay, hell beneath. Okay, so Sheol from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming as he descends into hell to stirreth up the dead for thee. Okay, that word, the dead, once again is Rapha. Okay, as in a ghost, as in dead, deceased. Okay, folks? Do you see what I'm talking about here? Where how that word, so we've got Rapha as a root word means to cure or heal. It is also linked to the dead, okay, and demonic, and by virtue of that, demonic entities who are raising up to greet Lucifer while he descends into hell, folks, okay? And it's also said about this Nephilim tribe, right? I just wanted to show you that. It was very, very interesting to me. And there's something else I want to show you quickly while I'm thinking about it. We'll get to that one. Where's the other one? Okay. I don't think it's here. You know what? I've got another idea. Let's try this. All right. Right here it is. Isaiah 34:14. I did not show you guys the reference to Lilith last time, and I want to show you guys that reference right now, okay? Okay, Isaiah 34:14. The wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts of the island, and the satyr, we just talked about that. I talked about that in my last video, shall cry to his fellow, and the screech owl also shall find rest there, and find for herself a place of rest. Okay, screech owl. That literal word in Hebrew is Lilith, okay? A night specter, screech owl. So here they'll even admit to you that this is a night specter or demonic entity. And Brown Driver Briggs will tell you that Lilith, name of a female goddess known as a night demon. Now, what did I show you in the last video? How Ishtar and Astarte and Lilith are all linked to the same demonic entity, Ishtar, which was worshipped. You know, I showed you in the last video with the Bernie relief where she had feet like an owl and she had two owls on either side of her, and they called her the Queen of the Night, right? Okay. Lilith, name of a female goddess known as a night demon who haunts desolate places of Edom, okay? All right, I just wanted to show you that because I didn't get a chance to show that to you last time, okay? All right, now, let me move on here and show you this just so you know that I'm not making this stuff up and I'm not the only person who believes this. Okay. The name of the Zamzanim, okay, the Zimzim, okay, and I talked about that, how people think they are the Zuzims, right? The name Zamzamim originates from the Hebrew word Zimzim, which means buzz or hum. Now, how many of you have experienced spiritual warfare attacks in which, while it's happening, you get the buzzing or the humming noise in your ear and in the atmosphere around you, okay? That is what this tribe is named after, in my opinion, okay? The word itself is phonetically imitates or suggests the sound associated with a thing being named. So they're making this sound, and again, I told you how most people believe, and I think it's because they're unaware of the realities of spiritual warfare and spiritual attacks, that they got this name by a buzzing noise that they made when they spoke, okay? Now, me and I believe most other people that have had spiritual warfare attacks, and we know that these beings are part fallen demonic entity because they had fallen angels as fathers. We know that's a spiritual ability that demonic entities have. So I myself associate with this Nephilim being, thinking, okay, this Nephilim being probably had that same ability. For whatever reason, he could probably affect the atmosphere around him and project these buzzing or humming sounds, and also project terror, like I told you the emims were literally named after, folks, okay? Let me go back and show you that. While I'm here, I'm kind of skipping around, folks, and I do apologize for that, but it's a complex subject, and I want to make sure I don't leave anything out. Okay, now, this is Genesis 14:5, where I was telling you, you know, in the 14th year came Shandalomer and the kings that were with him, and they smote the Rephaim, the Zuzims, which we just mentioned, and the Emims, okay? These Emims, okay, that word literally means terrors, okay? Like I said, which might be a reference to their ability to project dread or terror on the people that they are fighting with, right? Okay? Very, very interesting to me, okay? And once again, I want to mention really quickly, I want to really drive it home, okay? Now, you've got people that still believe in the theory of evolution, okay? So I don't trust a whole lot of what they say, but I do find it extremely interesting, and you can Google this, that they say that birds and serpents have a common ancestor that they both descended from, folks. And once again, the link is, okay, a lot of these demonic entities are serpentine. You've got the seed of the serpent, and you've got these bird-type beings that are mentioned in the judgment on Babylon that are demonic entities, in my opinion. And both of these things coming from a serpent ancestor are linked to demonic entities, which might be the serpent seed. Like I said, folks, I mean, you can't make that stuff up. You can't sit down and write a Hollywood script any more crazy than that, but let alone that this quite possibly might be what we're talking about, right? All right. Now, I want you guys to stop and think for a second. The military application you would have if you could link a soldier and first give them superhuman strength if you could, like these Nephilim, but on top of that, give him the ability to heal himself or cure himself or regrow a limb, okay? Like we talked about Rapha, how that means to heal or cure, and how I told you that some people speculate that is why Samuel chopped Agag up into a bunch of pieces, because he didn't want him to regrow his limbs and come back to life, right? And people speculate, now once again I say speculate, that that's why David cut off Goliath's head. You cut off the head of the snake dies, because he was a Nephilim. He cut off his head for fear that he might come back to life. And the root word for Raphaim being, being to heal or cure, right? Okay? And there's overlap in these names, folks. Don't think just because the Bible doesn't come out and specifically tell you that somebody was of the tribe of Raphaim, that does not mean that it wasn't a Raphaim. There's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of these more specific names that are Raphaim, like the Zemzumims. Technically, I believe it even says that in the Bible, that they are Raphaim, but the Moabites or the Ammonites called them Zuzims. So we know right there they're from the same thing, but the differentiating thing seems to be the type of spiritual ability that they had, that it seems like they were named after. That's the point I'm driving home here, right? Okay? And basically, imagine you could offer that to a soldier, right? Now, folks, I'm not knocking soldiers. I believe that God made men and women that are defenders for those around them, that he made stronger and with abilities and the ability to have the courage, like under fire, as they say, to fight for the people around them, folks. That is an honorable thing. There's references in the Bible, I believe it's in Romans, where Paul is talking about he's basically talking to people that are rebelling and that are outlaws, that they should fear the sword and the one that bears the sword, because they are God's hand of judgment on that. And I'll try to dig that up later and show you that. But basically he's talking about not rebelling against authority, because beings are in authority with that ability, and they don't carry the sword for naught, right? So people are sent here. I believe that God makes people and puts them on the earth to be defenders of weaker people, right? We all have certain specific abilities. But imagine you could go to somebody that has that inclination, that wants to protect their family, that maybe is not saved, and you're in the government capacity and you're saying, hey man, your country needs you, We've got this program here. We can give you superhuman abilities. Come, let us make you a part of this program. We're impressed with you. You've got the demeanor we want. Come be a part of this program and we'll give you superhuman abilities, okay? Not to mention, like, there are beings that are like animals that we know see better at night and whatnot. Imagine what you could do, and like as far as like a defense program, to give your soldiers a supernatural edge over their enemies, right? And imagine how you might bait people into an experiment program feeding off of their desire to already protect people around them, right? I just think I think a lot of people could get sucked into that. And there's been stories of people going back and telling their family, and leaving little hints about how, you're not going to see me again. And then they find out like a couple months later, they're told that person and his whole crew died in a helicopter crash. And the suspicion is that some people say that those people were probably adopted into those programs, and they faked their death because they're like, hey, once we start experimenting on you and make you a superhuman DARPA soldier, you're not going to go back to mom and pop with these abilities. You got to stay with us, right? And they say these people are willing to make that sacrifice for these abilities. Now, folks, of course I can't substantiate a claim like that. I'm just telling you what people say, right? All right. Now, and I showed you, I'm kind of reading off my notes here. I got to the Lilith thing. I got to the Seder thing and showed you where that is in Leviticus 17:7, and explained to you why I think that might be a reference to the goat of Mendes from Egypt, because they were worshiping that thing, and they were accused of making sacrifices to it and whoring after it, right? And that was, quote unquote, the Seder, right? All right. Now, I hope I haven't intelligently explained to you guys why I have these beliefs and why I suspect, I won't say I believe, but why I suspect, knowing what I know and knowing what a lot of you know about spiritual warfare. I mean, I want to throw that out there, folks. It's just for your information. Stop and think about what I said, okay? Now, here's another thing, folks. Now, get off the tinfoil hats here. But I've been, if you know me, for like steady for the last 10 years, I've been looking into all kinds of this stuff, right? I even looked into the flat earth thing and this, that, and the other, and, the biblical view of the earth, and I'm global earth, flat earth, folks, I don't know. I really don't know. I think there's merits in both arguments. And I wonder if it's not something in between that we don't understand because we can only experience 4 dimensions right now. And when we receive full dimensionality, like it says in the Bible, when we receive our glorified bodies, we will see Jesus as he is because we will be like him. When you can see in the 6th and 7th dimension, I think a whole lot of this stuff will make a whole lot more sense, right? But, okay, now we know from Genesis, folks, that God judged the earth and sent the flood because it says all flesh on the earth was corrupt. And we know that if you read that, and the understanding for most people reading that is that these fallen angels experimented on birds, animals, mankind, and they corrupted everything. And if you got the serpent seed, that would explain why you had so many of these serpent-type dinosaur beings around, folks, in my opinion, right? Okay, now, the Bible says that the waters from the fountains from above and the fountains of beneath were unleashed when the flood came. And as far as like a biblical worldview, right, there was the firmament above, and it says the firmament separated our world from the waters above. And people believe that doors or doorways opened in these firmaments, and the water that was above poured down into the earth, folks. Okay, that's where a lot of that water came from, and the fountains of the deep beneath exploded up above, folks. That's why it looks like that. That's why it looks like the United States of America and other countries fit together like a piece of a puzzle. They say that there are signs underneath the earth where that water busted up from the ground and literally separated the earth, and underneath the earth, it looks like seams on a baseball, folks. You can see where that water most likely busted up out of the ground. You know, they're not gonna teach you that at high school because they don't want you believing the Bible. But I mean, we know these things are there, folks. Okay. And now, okay, this is what I want to get into. Now, water is a natural barrier against radiation. Okay. And we know that there is radiation that comes from the sun, and you have the radiation belts out here, the Van Allen belts, okay? Now, if we had water above the firmament like the Bible says, and if in fact that water was drained out into the earth when God judged the earth, and now there's no water barrier and the radiation is hitting the earth, that radiation might be why we don't live to be 1,000 years old anymore. Okay, that may make us prematurely age, and God says that he's frustrated with man, and he's going to limit mankind's days to 120 years, and then later the reference is to 70 years, and we know that gradually some lived to be over 1,000, some 900, some 600, 700, some 400, and gradually it bled down to where we got here. That might be as that radiation from out in the solar system bled through in our dimension because we no longer had that water barrier, right? Okay, and that might be why we don't have such large animals here anymore, because they say when the firmament was intact and the water was up there, there was more oxygen in the air. And the more oxygen rich the environment is, the bigger things grow because more oxygen gets into your bloodstream. That may be how God stopped the Nephilim from growing to be 100 feet tall, folks. You know, just speculation on my part, but I wanted to throw it in there because we do know that, I mean, even evolutionists say now that it is most likely that the atmosphere of the earth long ago, they say millions of years, but I don't believe that. I believe they're talking about the pre-flood world. They say most likely it was a lot more oxygen rich, and that is how these animals supported themselves, because most of them will agree now that there's not enough oxygen in the air to support a being as big as a dinosaur anymore, folks. You know, hey, something changed, right? And another thing I want to bring up, folks, they took core samples in Antarctica, right? The Polynesians and those islands that are populated by the Polynesians literally claim that their ancestors come from Antarctica, and Antarctica used to be a tropical paradise, folks, okay? And, of course, European white men have laughed them to scorn. Absolute joke to them. Until 2017, when they went out there and took a core sample of the ground out there in Antarctica, and lo and behold, they literally found green, shrubbery and whatnot that was similar to what you would find in northern Italy. So if that's always been a frozen wasteland, where did that grass come from, folks? In simple talk, where did that vegetation come from? Where did that tropical level of grass grow from? Where's that vegetation from, right? Now that's another thing that people that believe that the firmament, when the firmament was in place and the water was on top of the firmament stopping that radiation, folks, that it was like a greenhouse effect on Earth. That every place on Earth experienced, for the most part, the same temperature. So it was the same degrees like a tropical paradise in Antarctica as it would be in Africa and other areas, folks. And that is why that vegetation is there, because when the flood came in, and when the flood came in, and our environment, as far as like the firmament and that water being gone, changed everything, made it to where the greenhouse effect is gone. You've got holes in the firmament now. It's leaking out. The greenhouse effect is gone, and that is why Antarctica is covered in snow, folks. You know? Now, like I said, get your tinfoil hats out, because that's a lot to absorb. But if you start trying to piece together the world and how we got here from a biblical perspective, I think those things need to be investigated. I think those are pretty good fundamental ideas about how we got here, and it explains a lot, folks, you know? And you know what? Another thing I'll just throw in that irritates me, folks, is when these people start talking about, well, 6 million years ago, they came over the land bridge and blah, 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 blah. Folks, the Phoenicians, seafaring people, have been all over the oceans. We have found maps where they literally mapped out the coast of North America way before they believed anybody could do it. We've literally found a Hebrew writing that Native Americans have over here on Hebrew tablets. One of them literally is at America's Stonehenge. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's in New Hampshire. They literally found an inscription to Baal, folks. It says, "To Baal, God of the Canaanites." Here, Native American tribes had it, folks. Okay? Now, if you're saying that people got here by way of a land bridge that they walked over before the Hebrew, the Israelites were even writing, then how did that script get here, folks? You know, I'm telling you, that's just our real history is being hid from us. They're not going to tell you the truth. But I'm going to tell you, for as far back as at least the flood, we knew Abraham built a boat, folks. Okay, well, that's what the ark was. It was basically a boat. Now, if he had the knowledge to build a boat, don't you think it's logical that his sons might know how to build a boat to float across the ocean? And then when the Shemites and Japhethites and the Hamites spread out, that at least one of those sons knew how to make a boat? I mean, they helped their dad make the ark, you know? So this belief that they just don't know how to make boats until a certain time and everyone walked across a land bridge, folks, to me is nonsense. I just don't believe it, folks. I don't believe it. I think a lot of it's hid from us. But, anyways, I think that's about everything that I have for this video, folks. You know, I don't want it to run too long. I've got some other things that I want to go over, but I'm going to stick it in another video, and I'll do it here in a day or two. So, until then, folks, until next time, God bless y'all in Jesus' name.